Alrighty, guys. Welcome to another episode of the City Barbers Podcast, Heart of the City. As always, we're deep in the barber shop here downtown. Today, I want to talk about something that I think is one of the most important things of being a barber, part of our craft, and ultimately one of the most important ways to separate yourself with your clientele. But before we start, Casey, you know the drill. Hit that intro. Alrighty, guys. Well, to begin, welcome. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good.
We got Sam, Samantha to my left.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning. Enjoying the smog this morning.
Well, good old Salt Lake City. It's deep of the wintertime.
Yeah.
Sean, welcome. How you doing, man?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, man. Well, first off, glad to have all you guys here. Thanks for coming in on a day off today with us. Consultation. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Arguably one of the most important things to start your service, to elevate your service, to connect with your client. I mean, it's communication. We all know how important communication is. Communication's key. It's the most important part with any relationship, any friendship. It's what human beings got to do. We got to elevate our communication with one another. But with consultation, for me personally, I think this is the best way to separate yourself from everybody else in the industry, everyone else in the shop that you're working in right now. I personally judge the crap out of somebody's consultation. I can listen and watch and observe any barber for that first, whether it's 30 seconds, whether it's 5 minutes, that very beginning of their service. It tells me most of all the things I really want to see with how much they care about the person in the chair, how articulate and how detailed they're going to be about every single step of their haircut with that individual. It's a good way to see, how they connect with human beings, how they're actually going to make that client feel by the end of it all. I think that very beginning of your service, it's pivotal. It's that first impression. And I think it's a way to educate, to inform, to get on the same page with the person in your chair. So I think it's one of the most valuable parts of the entire service. Kind of going to you guys first. What were your thoughts initially when you got in the industry about consultation, maybe like focus or energy to where you're at now? Where have you pivoted? Do you feel like you not only spend more time, but articulate your questions so much more? What's your thoughts, Sam, with the consultation of your service?
Consultation for me is literally getting to know that person. Like, say it's like basically the first time you've ever had them in your chair, you're basically on the first date. So you're kind of trying to figure out who they are, what their style is, whether it be business, casual, streetwear, more athletic style. You kind of just like get to know them as a person, and then you can kind of move forward to make their haircut, their hairstyle, their grooming needs, their routine in the morning a little bit more customizable just to them. And that's like a huge part of creating a huge experience until the next time they come and see you. I was always taught to do the double handshake. When you meet someone, you give them the handshake and then put your hand on top of them, because
Okay.
It just literally reassures, like, hey, I'm going to take care of you. Like, I have confidence enough to take care of you. I'm reassuring to take care of you. And you just look them in the eyes, and it literally relaxes them. Like, I've seen it multiple times happen to people. And then more with kind of just like the greeting, just like say, hey, your name, say, hey, Ryan, so nice to meet you. I'm Sam. I'll be taking care of you today. Just so they like have a little formal introduction, and it kind of just like breaks the ice a little bit.
With that, I always kind of feel this is our house. Like, this is our barbershop. We have to be the ones to, welcome and kind of lead that conversation. And, I would argue consultation doesn't start, once you're in the chair asking about what haircut they'd like. It starts from the very moment they walk in. It's the eye contact, it's welcoming them in, it's checking them in. And then, of course, when we're actually starting the service, say we finish our prior client, we clean up, and then we go get our next client. Obviously, that's kind of real starting zone of our impressions with them. But yeah, to your point, it starts the moment you say hello to them, introduce yourself, welcome them to the shop. Obviously how we work with our antique chairs, just showing them a little etiquette and understanding, how we like to get into the chairs, how we kind of move around the chairs. But it's confidence. It's knowing, because it is our house. This is our service. We're leading this dance. We're the ones taking that first step and coaching them to follow along with us, so it can relax them. It can give them the confidence that we know what we're doing. They can trust us. Like all of these little things with the tone in your voice, with the eye contact, with the direct kind of confidence language that you're using. Before we're not even talking about hair yet. Like it is just like introducing each other, breaking that ice of bringing them in, getting them comfortable in our chair. One thing that I always look at before, like once we're in the chair, not even talking about hair yet, or like asking specific questions, I love seeing, what they come in with their hair. Now they come in styled, they come in, bedhead, they come in with hat hair, they come in really do it, but when people get in the chair and you start asking them about their hair, whether it's how long ago since their last haircut, I remember when I started in school, that was a question that we kind of got taught to ask. I thought it was ridiculous. Like I honestly, I thought it was like a silly, kind of dumb question. I was like, no, let me ask like specific styles and lengths and kind of going there. I didn't see the value of what's the point of knowing how long since their last haircut. At this point, that is like my number one question that I really guide with, I really start with, because it really lets you know how often do they get haircuts, how much hair has grown out since their previous haircut. It just, no matter where you're going, you get a good mathematical sense of, all right, it's been 3 months since their last haircut. Unless we're doing a complete new overhaul situation, it gives you a pretty rough idea of how much you should be taking off in certain areas. Of course, we want to better the shape and kind of better the style, but it goes a long ways of knowing how long. It also lets you know how often they like to get their haircuts. Some of them are coming in, once or twice a month. Are they kind of one of those clients that only get it, every three months, once a quarter type situation? That helps gauge, all right, you're getting a haircut every 3 months, obviously, and we're looking to reset that grow out. It really helps you how much you should be taking off, and it helps you organize, all right, based on how long in between cuts, this is what I suggest we should be doing, and these are the reasons why, because it's not like they're coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks to get it cleaned up again. They need a hairstyle that's going to be able to grow out well for that extended period of time. So for me personally, when I was in barber school and I started that first week or so of draping and consultation, I didn't take it as seriously as I do now, but it's kind of one of those where asking how long has it been since their last haircut has been such a pivotal thing for me to understand where they came from, how long it's been. I can start connecting with how often they get their haircut, what styles I think are going to grow out best for them. So that was kind of one of those that I really, really noticed that helped me kind of engage and get a little bit better. But, when you're sitting in the chair, again, before even asking haircut questions, seeing how they run their hands through their hair.
Oh, yeah.
That tells you a lot of what they're going to do outside. I always joke is I can go blue in the face trying to teach you how to blow dry, how to do all these styles, but at the end of the day, 90% of the guys are going to do exactly what they've done for the last 40 years of their life. So figuring out how they run their hands through their hair, what their morning routine looks like, when they like to put product in, whether it's kind of that semi-damp after the shower, all the way dry, whether they put in a lot of effort with blow drying, whether they really don't. Those little individual morning routines and seeing how that individual, what they're already doing naturally, I think it's such a pivotal way to figure out what they're really looking for and what they're really going for.
Yeah. To piggyback off the how long was your last haircut, then I always like to say, well, how did it grow out? Is there anything that was like harder to style, anything that kind of bothered you? And wherever they touch first, that's always where it is. It's like, oh, I didn't like how heavy it was here, but they probably don't use the word heavy, but just like here was weird, like, I don't know, this was different, or it could be great, and you just kind of just follow the same guideline you had before. But it's a huge indication of like how they are styling it or the difficulties they're having. And
what
then just
what
like,
they notice bothers them as it grows out.
Or the routine, like, oh, like I can't get this side to lay down. Then you can give them like, oh, well, if you just kind of like comb it back and let it sit for a while, if you're not blow drying, and then you can kind of like shake it up after it's like 90% dry. And they're like, oh, okay. Just kind of give them little pointers, even before you even did the haircut, of how to style what they already had. Because it will get to that point in 4, 6, 8 weeks. So,
go to client-wise. Let's think client-wise in their perspective, what they're going through, whether they're coming into a new barbershop, sitting with a new barber, looking for a new hairstyle. How can we give confidence to the person in the chair? Because you get some people that, whether they've sat with somebody that can explain things, what they're doing, or they remember it. But I would say most clients, when they're sitting in the chair, they kind of get in that kind of pressure moment of like, oh shit, I gotta like explain what I'm really looking for. I don't know how to translate what's in my head. How can I communicate this? Before we even get into the barber side of specific ways to kind of maybe at ease the client and really explain all these things for a client, what's some key things that you would focus on to kind of teach them and get them confident of getting in the chair and be able to kind of explain what they're hoping for?
I think definitely don't say short on the sides, trim on top. Because it's funny, but it's in our head we're just like, oh no, like okay.
So many.
For
options.
me personally, like I'm just like, okay, there's so many different avenues we can go here. Like, so I think if you come in confident, we should be confident, but it's even going to make us feel more confident. Like, I love when a guy, you can tell he really cares about his hair and really kind of has a vision, because then I can take his vision and probably make it happen easier.
Refine it and detail it for like certain options, but like if they're kind of like, hey, I'm hoping for a style kind of more like this is how I'm running my hands through my hair.
Yeah.
Lengthwise.
Even if it's just a little bit of a direction, we can go off of just a little bit. Mm-hmm. So just have some sort of direction, and we can take that, spin it, do whatever we need to do with it. But definitely just a little bit of direction, I think.
I love photos.
Yeah, I love photos too.
I love photos of them when they had their favorite haircut. I love asking that, like, when was the last time you loved your hair? If they have a photo of it, great. If they can kind of describe it, even better. So if they have a haircut of them, haircut of someone who has hair that is like them. When you get someone with blonde hair, they come in with someone that has dark hair, really dense, tight fade, and they're like, I want this. I'm like,
it's not going to work.
It's not going to look anything like your hair.
Get your version of this.
We can get to there, but with your texture and everything, it's going to look a little different,
I think guys, I don't know if this is every shop, but with our shop specifically, I feel like they might be scared to show us photos, like it's going to offend us or something like that. Because I've had so many guys who are like, sorry, like, I just have some photos. Can I show you? I'm like, absolutely. Like,
oh, yeah.
Photo tells 1,000 words, or whatever that saying is. Like, that helps me so much more. So I'm always down for photos.
I love
so
photos.
much, because it's like, say it is them. It's like, hey, if you're showing us the in the mirror shirtless selfie, if that's how you get the hair, like, we've all seen it. Like, it is what it is.
I've actually had that. He's like, sorry, I don't have my shirt on. I'm like, whatever, dude. Like,
You can't crop it, but it's fine.
Right.
So it's like, when you're looking at all these hair, it's like, again, if we can see what you're hoping for, even if it's like, this was like 3 weeks grown out from our last haircut.
Even if it's a bad haircut.
It helps us so much, because then we can ask like specific questions of the area. Okay, well, I see this of this photo. Are we trying to, push it a little bit shorter than this? How much tighter?
Yeah.
Like, you can ask all these questions with having something to compare it to. So you're really able to like get on the same page and know that you guys are talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the hardest part with, say, a consultation, is even if you are confident with your words and what you're saying, if that person in the chair doesn't really know what either of those words mean, or even if you guys have a little misunderstanding, like, hey, you think you know what a taper is, I think I know what a taper is, but at the end of the day, we really are thinking a little bit differently.
Oh, yeah.
That changes everything.
And especially like regionally too. Like, you get somebody who's from California or wherever, like a taper and a taper fade and a fade are very different things than what we might think they are. So,
or someone said a razor fade to me the other day, and they just wanted like a normal like clipper over comb fade, and I was like, this is a little confusing.
Yeah,
not
for
gonna
sure.
lie.
Because obviously in our head, all right,
then that's just part of like communicating that. It's like,
Yeah.
all right, I'm going to take a straight razor and I'm going to take it all off.
Yeah.
like baby smooth ball.
And they're like, oh, no. I'm like, okay, then that's
Yeah.
not a razor
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
I also like when people bring 1, 2, 3 pictures, just because each picture is going to have something they like about it. But it also can be hard because if someone shows you one picture and then like halfway through the haircut, they show you another picture and you're
I've
like,
had that happen.
wait a second, like you showed me this one. So if you do have multiple photos that you do like, make sure that as a barber you're saying, okay, what do you specifically like about this photo, and what do you like about this one specifically? Like sometimes it's even the hair color that they like, and they just don't know that it's the hair color. Like they have brown hair and they show me like a blonde something and they're like, oh, I really like this. I'm like, well, what do you actually like about it? Because like this has nothing to do with your hair basically, and it might be something that they potentially might want. But I just think it's very important to be like, okay, what do you like about this? What do you not like about this? With your head shape, we can customize it to do this, but it's going to look a little different, and kind of just make sure you're like very thorough with pictures, because a lot of them are edited, and a lot of them.
And I will tell guys that too. I'm like,
Yeah.
you do know that that's an edited photo, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, really? I'm like, yeah. Like,
I'm like, you can't even see
it
the pores on their face.
It looks great, but come on, like that is a very, very, very crisp line.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, it's like going to the photos is, say photo 1 is, I really like this hairstyle, like how he's styling it, how he's moving it, the kind of length on the top of the hair, if you will. Oh, photo number 2 is like, well, this is where I really like the sides and back. So I can really kind of see whatever that length it may be, because you can easily, you don't need one perfect photo that you found on Instagram or Pinterest that like, this is what I want exactly. It's like, oh, I really like this one. I really like this one. And us as the professional is, all right, what do we love about this photo? Oh, it's the sides and back that we were like, okay, so I get a good idea of this is the length he's really going for there. We can ask some like finer details, like, okay, we see it's a fade. It's obviously an easy conversation, but it's one where there's different levels of this fade to our razor fade earlier comment.
Yeah.
I mean, you could easily do that natural light shadow fade, you know, kind of that 1.5 realm where you're just kind of getting that light shadow, dark shadow transition. So it's short, but it's nothing too short. Obviously, you can do that really tight light shadow fade, so where it's a really tight light shadow to the darker shadow. So again, we're still not down to a skin fade, and we're definitely not down to a bald fade. But there's then you can go shorter. You can go to this double skin, whether it's trimmer, close clipper, just getting really down to that tight stubble. And of course, if we're going baby smooth bald with either bald or a razor, even just in that fade category, you know, there's 4 or so different levels. You know, especially with different, if you work in a barber shop where your clientele is pretty diverse with different hair color, different hair types, different densities, those different lengths significantly impact what that hair looks like. So even when you are having that fade conversation on those shorter haircuts, there's so many levels along the way, and it makes sense that a client wouldn't be as aware or as articulate with like, yep, I want this, everything kind of like just laid out for us. So even when you get to that level, it's like, all right, now let's give you those options so we can really clear it up and like, oh, okay, this is the one that feels like them. And then the other photos, like, all right, this is the hairstyle, whether, you know, it's the pompadour kind of going more backwards and blended on both sides. Of course, you got the side part, whether it's going kind of the quiff or the more textured style going forward, the crop. Like, as a client, getting multiple photos and finding the certain things that you like about that photo, that helps a ton.
Yeah.
Like, don't think you have to get the one perfect photo where just everything is aligned from top to bottom on it all. Showing us multiple and having us communicate about that, it goes a long ways.
And I feel like sometimes they already have that haircut. They just like the style of it. So then you can teach them how to style it. Or maybe it's an editorial shoot and it's like a movement shoot. And you're like, well, your hair's not always going to look like it's in movement the whole time. So you just have to let them know, like, this is like a 1-second photo from an editorial page that is beautifully choreographed, but it's not going to be something that's going to be wearable every day. So let's kind of get you into something that looks like this, that we can style with the hair you already have and kind of get you there as well.
Agreed.
Yeah.
You know, barber-wise, kind of now tailoring it to us, what are some things that you like to really ask your clients or try to figure out when you're doing your consultation specifically?
I mean, you guys kind of nailed them. I definitely like to ask, like, when was your last haircut? How was the grow? Especially if it's a return client, I always try to ask, like, how was the grow out? Like, and I even tell them, like, if it's something you didn't like, I want to know. Like, don't think you're gonna offend me. Like, that's something we can grow on together, and we can figure it out. But I also, I was told this. I don't know if you guys agree with this, but somebody told me that guys will generally think or see length when it comes to a haircut. Like, when they see a haircut, like, on the street, like a guy walking by, like, they're going to be, oh, that's a good haircut. They notice the length. Women notice shape. And so I feel like I really have been trying to explain to my guys, like, shape, if they don't understand, like, the shape of a haircut, and stop thinking about, like, just length. Like, because I'll fall into the, like, routine of just being like, oh, like, half an inch off the top or, like, this much off. Like, I'm really trying to be better at explaining shape to their head shape and why we're creating this shape and why it works for them. So that's something that I've been working on, is trying to explain shape to them if I feel like they don't really understand it, because like we all cut to shape here. Like it's not a length thing to us. So it's like, I always keep that in my mind, that like guys are going to think more length than shape. So I'm trying to educate them on shape and hopefully try to move from that and grow on that. So that's one thing I've been trying to work on.
Yeah. I mean, the two biggest things that you said, like, obviously this is how we kind of operate here, but shape being the main focus of everything that we're doing, and using the word educate to make sure they're aware of what we're explaining, why we're explaining, and ultimately why this benefits and helps them out with what they're trying to do. You know, how I always like to explain the haircut. You know, if you have a length haircut, at the end of the day, you're doing a contour haircut. You're pulling everything outside of the head. When you do that, everything is round. You know, all of us have a round-shaped head to some level. So when everything is based around length, and you're using a traveling guide for the entire haircut, which is what schools are teaching everybody. Everybody that went to school, you're learning this length haircut, a traveling guide. Yeah, it's good to understand the hair and have a starting point. But if you pull all that out, it's a round-shaped haircut. When you pull everything out, it's a round-shaped haircut on a round-shaped head. As that grows out, I always call it the chia pet effect. Everything just grows out. Every client has been there where they're happy with the haircut when they get it, whether it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks go by, and they're like, oh man, it's just not styling the way it used to. It's feeling bulky in certain areas. Can promise you there's always a why. There's a reason why that's happening. And if you're having the generic haircut, I always joke is 98% of people in the industry cut the hair the same way. It's the 2% that's actually giving you a detailed haircut. But that 2% understands shape, understands your head shape, your growth pattern, and can create that shape around your round-shaped head. But the 98%, they're just giving you a length haircut because that's what they were taught in school. So as that grows out, the chia pet effect comes in, and you're not happy with how it's styling. It's because of how it was cut. You know, I always joke with parents, you know, it's don't blame the kids, blame the parents. You know, the parents are the ones teaching these kids. It's the same way. You know, don't blame the person sitting in the chair. You know, blame the person behind it. You know, we're the ones cutting their hair, not the person sitting in the chair. So sitting with somebody that actually understands shape is everything, because that's what grows out is the shape. So if you have that round-shaped haircut, it grows out. Boom, chia pet, just in a couple weeks.
Helmet head.
If you have, depends on what style you're going for, but a lot of the styles, especially on the sides and back, is going to be a lot more square. Really, cube is the best way to really think of it, but you're really building a more geometric cube, diamond, or triangle around their round-shaped head. So that square, for easy example, everything grows down and out. So it's the same haircut, it's the same shape, it's just getting longer and longer and longer. So the shape's what really grows out. And especially for the top, this is the easiest way to explain it. A high majority of clients, whether they're tossing a little bit kind of to the side, whether it's a side part, whether it's a pomp, but everything's kind of going to like a back right corner or a back left corner, especially as it gets longer and longer. So many times we see this is, you know, they're coming in, they're running their hands to the front, to that back area there, and it just keeps falling down on their face. And to be able to show them why it's falling on their face and educate them on why that's happening is, you know, the past person that cut their hair, if you lift everything straight up on that top, because it's a round-shaped haircut, the apex, which is kind of the highest point of hair, is longer than your bang hair. So everything is kind of
just pushing it down.
Exactly. So that long hair is going to win. So even though you're trying to toss it back, that long hair is winning and pushing everything forward, especially as it's been 3 weeks, 4 weeks kind of removed for it all. So when you're in that consultation, really figuring out how they want to style it, really should answer like, all right, they're trying to style it a little bit more backwards, whether it's straight back, a little bit back right, like that is really what you need to figure out. Okay, if I'm doing that, if long hair is going to win, I need my bangs, my fringe to be longer than their apex. So you have to have that more positive angled shape because it goes up so you can actually toss it back and have it stay back on its own. I can't tell you how many clients, when you sit them down, they're 50-year-old men. You know, they've been getting haircuts their entire life. They've had the same haircut, the same style their entire life. They're sitting in with somebody that actually knows how to see shape and explain shape. I'm like, okay, we see that you're styling it to the back right corner. Hey, let me show you something. You lift up, you know, we call it the mohawk, but, you know, just imagine a mohawk that you just lift straight up. Oop, this is why it's falling down on your face. This is why it's not doing what you want, is because you got longer hair in the back to shorter hair in the front, so everything's just getting pushed down forward, let alone their growth pattern, which is a different conversation. But if we want to toss it to that back, let me show you what we're going to do. We're actually going to control the bangs, because this is actually a really good length right now where it's at. It's long enough that it can style back, but nothing too long to where we're going to slick back or anything too crazy of what they want. But what we're going to do is we're really going to adjust that shape. We're really going to pivot from a negative slope on that top to now a more positive slope. So when you do style it back, it will style on its own. It will stay back on its own. You can use less product. It will grow out doing what you want to do. Well, my first 2 years, education was everything, because it's one where I knew I had this information that the average client had no idea, have never been explained it. So those first 2 years, every single person in my chair, it was just I'm going to educate the shit out of them and just explain everything of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. Let me teach them what the shape actually is, how it's going to accomplish what we're actually trying to accomplish. 9 times out of 10, it would be, man, I've never had a barber explain this to me. I've never had anybody explain this to me. And it's one where it makes sense. Once you can show them and you can explain what you're going to do, let alone accomplish it and have it grow out so they can feel it. I've had so many people experienced in their haircut world, 50 plus years old, of this is the first time I've ever been explained of why it should be cut this way.
I had it happen to me yesterday. Same thing.
Yeah.
Just explain a growth pattern. I'm like, he's been going that way for 10 years. And I'm like, well, your hair goes this way. I'm like, watch, I won't even blow dry it, product, anything. I'm going to comb it this way, and it's going to stay right there. And he's like, wow, you're the first person that's ever showed me that. So, yeah, I was just like, yeah, man, that's how it is. And
there's a rhyme and reason. There's always a why something should be happening and be accomplishing the way that we're going for. You can always accomplish it. It's just if you know what you're looking for, if you know how to explain it, it can be accomplished.
Yeah, like you said, our job is to educate, and it's their job to choose what they want.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll choose the wrong path. You'll explain it to them, and they're going to be like, no, I don't like the weight here, or the ledge here, because we do cut it square. Or I don't like that. I'm like, okay, well, we can compromise the shape, but this is what's going to happen, because they're going to say, oh, well, my hair always springs out right here, or something like that. It's like, okay, well, you need length to hold that hair down. So we're going to do this. And he's like, no, I want to take it shorter. I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it shorter, but I promise you, bing, take it shorter. He's like, look, it's doing it again. I'm like, well, that's what happens.
I want to be able to educate them. And that's how I always tell my clients too.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 times they're like, all right, it makes sense what you're saying. So thanks for explaining it. It's great that we got educated, but ultimately, I trust you. It's why I'm coming to you in the first place. So that happens often. But that 1 out of 10 clients that maybe is a little bit more resistant to change or just wants to do something. There's certain areas that obviously mean a lot to them that they want a specific way. I always say, it's like, hey, dude, this is your hair. I will do whatever you want. I really don't care. But let me give you the options. I'm a big options kind of guy. I think when you have options, you have things to compare it to. So it helps me know what he's really thinking about. I give him so many options. Even if you choose option B, now I'm like, all right, now the next sub question is all right, we have this option, or we can either do it a little bit this way. But when you have these options, it lets them be well informed. They're going to hear the pros and cons of every possibility, and it gets them an educated, not guess, but an educated choice. Be like, okay, I hear you. I think the option B option is, the trade-offs or the world I want to live in. One of my favorite sayings, I don't know if you guys have sat next to me, you've heard me say this 1,000 times, but one of my favorite sayings is, there's no such thing as solutions, there's only trade-offs. And sometimes when you got specific growth patterns with specific haircuts that are kind of going against what the growth patterns want to do, there's trade-offs. There's no way around it. There's not always going to be a solution for every little thing. There could be a solution for a problem, but ultimately, how we get there, there's going to be another trade-off for other type of things. But to segue into that, growth patterns. I think this is something I'm quite surprised how little clients are aware that their hair has a very specific growth pattern to it. It's part of their DNA. It is going to do what it wants to do. I always like to explain it. Think of a fingerprint. Even though we all got fingerprints, a lot of ours look kind of the same. We got similar stuff. But when you really look at it, all of us are different. They have our own little design to it, our own little motion to it. Think of the galaxy, because everybody always has, we always call them calyx here in the United States, but the growth pattern kind of in the back. If you really think of it as a galaxy, and you get that eye of that swirl, you got that black hole of that galaxy, things are rotating off of that. Some are clean, some are...
So you got two sometimes, too.
For sure. You get that 2 or 3.
And you're just like, oh.
Double crown.
Yeah, so it's part of it, right? So it's like these contradicting growth patterns that are happening. And, like I was saying, some are very clean. Some are pretty simple. They just go... Everything on the hair kind of goes clockwise. Some go counterclockwise. Some... kind of open up like a flower where like the top half kind of goes to the left, the bottom half kind of goes to the right. But there's a design to it. There's an actual growth pattern to every single person's hair. That's something as the professional, not only do we need to educate ourselves to where we can notice that and see that, but to explain that to our clients. To me, that helps the most with styling, because at the end of the day, how we cut and how I'm going to cut is I want to make sure you as a client are happy with the style that we've talked about, the lengths that we've talked about, because I want to make sure you're happy. As long as I'm within that ballpark of making you happy of what you are going to be able to visually see and know, I'm doing everything the hair wants to do. I'm listening to what the growth pattern is. I'm seeing of how cooperating or not cooperating it is when it gets cut to a certain length. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that no matter what. I'm going to tailor make it to what your hair pattern is going to do, as long as I'm within the boundaries of making you happy with the style and the lengths. I like educating it. I like kind of telling all those things. But I'm also pretty dang surprised of the industry of how little or just not as many barbers as I wish there were that actually recognize that growth pattern and take the time to educate themselves and to be able to
manipulate it or work with it or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I could
And
probably
not just
say,
cut it all off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably say like most of our new clients when they come in, you're like, wow, that crown was just not dealt with or not wanted to all the way up, and you're like, so there's going to be a little grow out phase, like to get your hair to do what you want, and they're usually like pretty receptive about it because they're like, okay, you guys know what you're talking about.
But just giving them that little bit of info, they're like,
Yeah.
oh wow, like I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
I think the biggest part for us educating them is that we're getting educated by asking them questions as well. Like going back to like kind of like the greeting and like making sure that we're asking the right questions. I love to like turn my person around in the chair, look in the mirror, not put the cape on them, because you can see their style, what they wear, and how they kind of like are looking at themselves as well in the mirror. Mm-hmm. And they can kind of like give you like links or how they put, like you said, push it behind there. And then as well as just making sure that you're tailoring it to them. It kind of gives them a relaxed environment as well. If you kind of like scrouch down a little bit, make a little bit more eye level, kind of open up that space for them to kind of be able to feel comfortable. Like we're not like peering over them like, hey, what do you want to do? You can just like kind of relax back, ask questions, make sure they're feeling comfortable, show pictures. And all those questions that you're asking: when was your last cut? How was it styling? What's your lifestyle like? What's your routine in the morning? Mm-hmm. Like, how quickly do you get ready? Do you have time to like add an extra step, add a blow dry, add a little bit more product? And then you'll be able to basically go over what you're going to do. And then you can kind of come to a decision together. What I also like to do is I kind of like to ask for permission whenever I look at someone's head. Like, okay, we kind of talked about what you want to do. Like, hey, can I touch your hair? Can I like kind of see what we're working with? Then you're going in, you're checking out scalp health. You're checking out hair quality, dryness, if they have an overabundance of grease, oil, dandruff. And you're kind of checking hairline, you're checking cowlicks, you're checking all the bumps, the head structure, everything, while you're kind of going in, getting your hands in the hair, seeing what you're working with. And I think that's super important, because you can just go in and start cutting, a fade and clipper over a comb. You're like, oh, wow, they have a huge occipital bone that was hiding underneath all this hair. And if you don't touch the scalp or touch the hair, you're going to be kind of backpedaling trying to figure that out. So I really like that we can ask questions and also get our hands in their hair to kind of make sure that we're educated enough to kind of go through the steps of next and being like, okay, this is what we talked about. We're going to, take an inch off the sides, make it a little bit more flowy, and then kind of just confirm with them that's actually what we want to do. And then you kind of avoid that whole like, oh, can we go a little shorter, during the middle of the haircut or at the very end. And you're like, well, I have my next client in like 5 minutes. That's
All
a
of
whole
these
nother
things
haircut. Yeah.
should have been figured out in those first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's, taking the time. And I want to go to kind of one thing that you said, which is ultimately taking the time to have that full consultation before you even drape them, let alone cut their hair, wet their hair, comb their hair. It is obviously how we work. We like turning our clients to the mirror. For how we operate, before I get in, I guess, the consultation, the barber industry, it was always kind of known as heavy on the kind of community gathering where everybody would, everything was walk-in. You'd walk in, you'd be sitting around with the community members. So at that time, that's why the barber chair has always been away from the mirror. Like, of course, we use it for creating space and be able to see everything, and we can easily still do that. But you always had the client turned towards the community because it was so much more engaged in everything there. And if you have an incredibly tight-knit kind of community and little group, that's great. How we ultimately operate, especially because how we have it spread out, our chairs are 7.5 feet apart from each other, so we got a little bit of distance, close enough to talk, but far enough away to where the person in the chair, it's all about that person. And one, we wanted to kind of be different in the industry of turning people towards the mirror. But we wanted the client and their barber to have a really good, intimate interaction with it all. And letting the client being able to utilize the mirror with us, I think the biggest thing that helps with, besides them seeing kind of how we're operating, and they're a part of the process, but it's communication. And when you're able to make eye contact and be able to communicate with your client for the entire hour, it goes a long ways. It relaxes that client. It lets them know that we're all on the same page. We can really communicate. So going to the consultation, once we turn them towards the mirror, we're always standing in front of the in front of our sink, and we're having that face-to-face conversation. So we're taking the time of, all right, before I'm not even draping you, I'm not standing behind you. We're face-to-face. Like, let's figure out what we're trying to do. Let's answer all of these questions. Let's really figure out what you're looking for. So I love kind of what that you brought that up, but that's a big thing that we always love to do is let's have a rapport building time. Let's really have that face-to-face communication before we're just getting down to business.
Yeah, if you put the drape on, it instantly closes you off. You're like, okay, we're starting. It doesn't give you that like, hey, like, what do you do for a living? Like,
and it can take a few minutes sometimes. Like, it doesn't always. Sometimes it can take a minute, 30 seconds, but sometimes like it'll take a couple minutes. And I try not to do this, but sometimes like I'll even pull out my phone and Google some different styles if I feel like we're not connecting and we're not communicating the way I really want to. It's like, all right, do you mind if I pull out my phone and like just kind of show you what I'm thinking, and then we can build something off that. I really try not to do that, but that's kind of like,
well, it's the new school of magazines.
It's like a last tool in your pocket kind of thing.
Me too.
Like, wouldn't you rather take 5 full minutes getting organized and getting 100% on the same page of the entire haircut, instead of starting that haircut, you do everything, you get it dialed in, and then 10 minutes to go, you're starting to style, you're doing everything there, and now there's hesitation because like, oh, maybe let's go a little shorter, let's try kind of something here. I'm under the belief of, no, let's figure everything out at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And of course, things can kind of change along the way, and you can always figure that out. But if you take the time at the very beginning to get that consultation dialed in, so every square inch, I mean, we're talking style, we're talking kind of length on top, length on the sides, length of sideburns, length of back of the neck, of how natural, how tight those tapers are, facial hair, again, length of beards, shapes of beards, the tightness of tapers and all the transition areas, the mustache. If you figure out every square inch of that haircut before you even begin, one, we're all on the same page and we can get down to business. Now we can focus on connecting as human beings, relationship building there for the rest of the service. And then when you're ultimately showing them there, you're able to be like, hey, this is what we talked about. This is every little square inch that we talked about.
And basically reword the consultation to them at the end. Like, all right, this is what we did. Boom, boom, boom. And they're like, oh, wow, that's exactly what we said.
And you can show them in the mirror, from what we said at the beginning to how it's executed now. This is, it right here. Basically, you're closing out that consultation as you're showing them in the mirror. And again, it just goes to that education process So they're very aware of everything
Yeah.
they're getting. There's no loose ends or I don't knows along the way. I always feel that when I see barbers, they're unsure of where they're really going to end with that haircut, but they're cutting, right? They didn't do a deep enough consultation, so they're in the middle of a haircut.
I've been there, so
And it's one of those
Just
where
winging it.
it's a growing experience.
yeah.
So
And it's overwhelming as the barber because you're like, I'm on a time crunch. I'm trying to do this here. You're ultimately like, I don't know if this client's like going to be, I'm 100% happy. Like, did I nail it on that length? But when you have that really in-depth conversation, it lets 99% of the worries and the unknowns gone.
Yeah.
you could just cut confidently. And I promise you, like, anytime I've had a guy walk out the door, maybe I don't think he was as happy as he wanted to be, I wasn't as happy as I wanted to be, you can always backpedal it to the consultation.
Yes.
Every single time it's like, I should have done a better consultation or communicated something better.
Yep.
And like you said, it's a two-way dance. It could be the communication on their part and your part. So, like, if you're able to look at that and learn from it, and, like, those are instances you'll remember for years. Like, you'll remember their face. They may never come back, but it's like, I remember that, and, like, I need to learn from that and grow on it. And like I said, you can always, for the most part, root it back to your consultation.
Yeah. Going back to your earlier question to me, like, now, from the beginning till now, I honestly had a list of questions I would make sure I would ask. And I would, like, have a clipboard, and I would ask those questions for me and for them to show that I am making sure that I would, like, so tell me about yourself. This is our first time being together. How do you like your hair? What do you don't like about your hair? What was your favorite hairstyle? Do you use heat? Do you anything? And I would just, like, check off those lists, ask for length, style, and it always turned out a lot better experience. And then I would honestly have those notes for the next time they came in. And I would be like, hey, we talked about this last time. How did it work out? And then I can always adjust it. And I always did that a lot, either whether it's putting in notes in my phone or, like, my scheduling app, or I just had an index back in the day when I started. But I feel like if you just constantly rehearse that at home in the mirror, asking yourself those questions, repeating it, it's gonna be really fluid, and it's not gonna feel weird, because sometimes you're like, feel like you're interrogating them as soon as you meet them, and then after a while it just becomes casual, second nature. And then just make sure you do it, even if so we all have those clients that they have had the same hairstyle for years and years and years. I'm bored with it, they're bored with it. Make a little suggestion, like, make sure you're still doing a consultation with those. Same as usual, yep. Okay, well, how about this? Like, make sure they're in the right mood for sure. But
Yeah.
I just feel like make sure you rehearse it. It's going to be way easier in the long run.
Well, I remember an earlier comment you made a couple episodes ago is, say you've cut the same client for years, and it's been a similar haircut always, and say that day that client was like, you know what, Ace, we're going to try something new. Like, they came in with all that intention, and then once you get them in the chair and you don't give them that opportunity to kind of open up, it's more of just like,
They'll
hey.
shell up. And
Exactly.
they'll be like,
The drapes
yeah.
on, they're like, oh, maybe next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like you want to eliminate that. You want to make sure always that you leave that door open of, hey, are we open to doing something new? And I think that goes a long ways of figuring out your client, of kind of their life and everything they're doing. But yeah, you always need to kind of keep that door open to let them know, like, hey, we can always try something new. We're already at a short haircut, and I see you every 3 weeks. We're limited today, but let me give you options. So hey, if you're ever wanting to try something new based on your hair, your growth patterns, here's kind of your options. Chew on it, think about it. I always joke is like, dude, I'm cool with Steady Eddie. Like, we can keep on doing what
Bread
makes
and
you the
butter.
most comfortable.
Yep.
There's sometimes that Steady Eddie is exactly what their hair should be doing, what makes their life the easiest. Sometimes it is really the perfect haircut for them. But if you still kind of give them that opportunity to know that it's always on the table, that you can change things.
And if you don't, they might go find another barber because they're also bored with it, but they just don't know how to say it to you because you're in such a routine when you see each other.
Exactly, especially how I've really seen with barbers, the average barber, pretty great at, say, short hairstyles. I know there's a lot more, education and academies going out there, so barbers are starting to get a little bit more talented with their shear work, but that's something that we were able to separate ourselves from day one, is it doesn't matter if we're doing bald fade to, short but nothing too short, to short and flowy, to medium hair length, to tucking behind the ears, to collar length, to shoulder length, to middle of your back. we're comfortable and confident with all of them. Doesn't matter ethnicity, hair type, hair density. Not every barbershop has the confidence, or not every barber has the confidence to do any hair length, any hairstyle, any hair type. But if you do find somebody that you do have that with, man, imagine having that rapport where, right now we see fuller hairstyles are absolutely way more in style. And we've been seeing that transition over the last 2 or 3 years here in the States. But it's one where you walk outside 10 years ago, everybody had an undercut, a skin fade of some sort. Where now you walk outside, everybody's got medium length, long hair, flowy, mullet, middle part, crops going on. Like it's very in.
The heavy fringe that's in their eyes. They put a hat and blow dry straight up. Yeah.
It works
for them,
but it's in, right? So these
good.
trends do change, and we're seeing. I've had more clients that have been short, professional, pretty formal guys their whole life, starting. No, hey, let's maybe go a little fuller. Let's try something a little bit new, and giving them the confidence that no matter what style or trend they want to try out, that you can execute on all of that. They don't have to find a new place. They don't have to find a new person. That goes a long ways. Being able to sit in the same chair 100% of the time, no matter what you're really going for.
I love to plant the seed. So I like to give them their normal haircut, whatever we had a consultation about. And then I like to be like, oh, well, have you tried this before? What's the longest your hair's ever been? And kind of like plant that seed when I can both kind of tell we're a little bored with the style or kind of a little more redundant. And then it kind of gets them excited to think about their next haircut.
Yeah.
So then you can have like a little bit of like a pre-consultation to maybe something different. And I love doing that.
Yeah, I same. Especially if I ever get a client that, for whatever reason, life kind of gets in the way and they go longer than usual from their previous haircut. And they're coming in. And even if they are just like, yeah, we're resetting everything there. And it's kind of like, hey, if you ever want to try a little bit fuller, let me just kind of show you what that looked like. Pulling out the sides, like, hey, we kind of control this. We'd really start kind of cleaning up around the hairline there. So you'd be a fuller, still off the ear, still clean. But it kind of enlightens to the possibilities. Like, hey, if you ever wanted to try going a little fuller, a little different, like, we can do that. We can absolutely try that.
And being a barber and changing your style every season really helps them feel comfortable with changing theirs as well. When I was in the salon, I would do that all the time. I'd change my hairstyle, my color, just how I do it all the time. And it would be like, oh, well, yours is cool. Let me try something like that. Like you see that with like Sticks and his longer hair, your longer hair, a lot more longer hair.
We have
people.
a good variety of styles in here that clients will look and be like, oh, I want that haircut.
Yeah.
What was it, like
right.
2 years ago? Everyone buzzed their head off, or hair off, not their head. But everyone else was like, oh, let me try a buzz cut. It's just like, because it's like, okay, this is an environment of style and charisma and confidence. Like people want to be a part of that. And I think that's really cool to kind of like change up your style and inspire others.
I agree. Such an easy way to kind of let them know that, like, hey, change is okay. We can do different things. I'm doing different things. You can do this too.
It doesn't matter how old you are either. I got older guys who are just like, well, I'm too old for that. I'm like, no, you're not. Like, if you got the hair for it, rock it.
Dude.
Hell yeah. And I always joke too, because it's usually the very professional, middle-aged clientele that are they're hesitant. Of course, we don't know their lives and their bosses and their clients, if you will. So we don't really know. But I always joke. I'm like, hey, this is easy for me saying this. I'm a 27-year-old barber, but it's like as long as it's groomed and it's executed well, like nobody cares. Like as long as it's quality, you can have full long hair, you can have short hair. You can have a beard, you can have a mustache, like you can have all these different lengths as long as it's quality and done well and you maintain it. If you haven't gotten a haircut or a beard trim in 6 months and it looks like it, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Lack of grooming, that's what looks unprofessional. That's what looks unkept. Again, 27-year-old barber saying that, so it's really easy for me to say that. I don't know everybody's shoes of what it's really like. But man, if you get that confidence and you're able to have it groomed well, I think it's personally, you still can look really professional. You can really look dialed in, and you can create that change. And I always joke too is, you always hear, oh, the grow out sucks. It's like you got to go through all of these terrible, awkward stages. And don't get me wrong, everybody's hairstyle, growth pattern is different, so there's complications in there. But I always say is, if your grow out is awful, like if that's how you're explaining your grow out, I'm going to tell you why. It's because your haircut sucks.
Yeah.
It's because that shape is terrible. Is if you
or you
had
don't know how to style it while it's
yeah,
growing out.
if you had a good shaped haircut, there might be some growing pains because you haven't had that length before, so it's something new to you. But if it's cut well, it can grow out for months and months. And okay, every once in a while, it's nice to get it kind of tidied up to make sure that shape is balanced even better so it can grow out even more long term. But again, you're staying groomed, you're kind of staying put together. But that's how I always say it is. If you want to judge a haircut, grow it out.
Yeah.
If you go 3 months, which for most guys is a long time, and if that's your normal routine, double that, go 6 months without a haircut. Besides the growing pains of it being new and different at a different length, if you're just constantly like, oh my God, like I can't do this, or I'm just so upset, like it just sucks as it grow out, there's a why. It could be a higher quality shape on that haircut. And again, don't blame the person sitting in the chair. Blame the barber.
I love when we have clients come in and they're ready for a haircut. I'm like, do you even need one? I'm like, yes.
It makes
looks
like
great.
honestly, like obviously you like to see an end product at the end of an hour in the chair. You're like, okay, that looks like a good haircut. But when a guy comes in 4 weeks and you're just like,
Yeah.
wow, like your hair looks
Great.
decent. Like
Yeah.
you're ready for a haircut, but like you can rock it.
Yeah.
Like that is a really good feeling.
Like me as a barber, I see it like it's styling really well and it looks really good. You might not be the happiest because you're used to it shorter and you prefer things to look a little bit cleaner, if you will, in their mind. But the overall like shape and style and how everything's laying and growing out, it's just like, man, you look good.
It's like so like when you finish a haircut, it's kind of like that instant gratification. You're like, okay, like I pulled that off, but then it's like that delayed gratification, a few weeks, maybe a couple months down the road or whatever it is. You're like, okay, like I can do this. Like I know what I'm doing and I can do it well.
Yeah. My favorite compliment is when somebody comes back and it's just, this is the best grow out I've ever had. You know, it's like, yeah, I want it cleaned up, but it's like I was able to style it the entire time. Everything worked really well. For me, that is my number one favorite.
Oh, yeah. I had that after COVID. It was like we were closed down for 100 days where I was at, and men would come back and be like, my hair still looks fine. It's just long. And I was just like, yes.
Yeah.
It was such a huge compliment.
Well, and you'll see it like with barbers on social media. Like I'll notice it. I'm super observant, but they'll post a cut. And I'm like, wow, that looks really good. Like whether it's a fade or whatever. And then you'll see them post a couple weeks down the road or a week, and it's that same client, and they post a before like video, and you're just like, oh my gosh. Like, and this isn't talking shit. It's just like there's a client and there's a barber for everybody, but those are probably the guys that want to go every 7 days or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
but like
more
you
high
just-
maintenance
Yeah,
cut.
you just look at it and you're just like, if that person for some reason couldn't come back for their haircut, couldn't afford it, whatever it was, life hit them, they got laid up in the hospital, like their haircut's not going to look good growing out. So it's just, I notice those things, and I don't want to be the barber that does that. Like I want them to be able to go 4-6 weeks. Yeah, maybe that's not as much money in my pocket, but
Yeah, but you also think about on the other end is it gives you a chance to impact more people because you need more clientele. You know, if your average client is every 10 to 14 days, which is a lot of barber shops out there, you need 50, 100 clients to keep you kind of busy throughout that entire time. You know, if you are going 4-6 weeks with each clientele, you need 400.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
one of those where it's a different growing pain. It's a different level of getting that clientele. But how I always say it is two ways. I like impacting more people. I want to impact 400 people. I don't want to impact 50 people. I enjoy being able to impact more people, I guess, on this planet, and hopefully give them a, you know, not only confidence in themselves with what we do behind the chair, but, you know, to give them a good relationship that they get excited for, that they can connect with, that they know they can build rapport with, and, you know, share their honest feelings without feeling judged or anything there. So it's like I like having clientele that does go a little bit further in between clients because I get to impact more different individuals. So that's a win for me. But then on the other side is every year, just for easy math, you're going to lose 15 people no matter what. Whether, again, like to your point, you know, life kind of hits them, they lose their job, they move away, you know, their girlfriend or daughter gets into hair school, or somebody they know gets into hair school. There's so many things that are going to get somebody to leave. Every year, you're going to lose clients no matter what. Life happens. If you have 400 clients and you lose 15, you know, that's a smaller percentage. You say have 50, 100 clients but lose 15. That's a bigger percentage that you're losing that have to kind of keep on filling. So that there's trade-offs. And again, to your earlier point too, is there's not a right way, there's not a wrong way. But how I operate and how we operate, we enjoy having that time in between to, have that longer grow out, not feel like they're sitting in the chair all the time, being able to impact more people. For us and how we operate, obviously that's more tailored to us. But, the barbers that have a little bit more of a concentrated clientele and they see them a little bit more often, again, there's no right or wrong reason to it all. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a client for every barber and there's a barber for every client. There's plenty of fish in the sea. I'm a big believer there's no such thing as the famine mentality. We can all eat at the table. If you're willing to put in the work and help out in the kitchen, everybody can eat.
I had a client yesterday. They're like, hey, I want to get a gift card for my friend, but it's kind of like a double-edged sword because they could be taking a spot that I want. And I thought that was funny. And I was like, no, dude, you're good. I'll always slide you in. But I just thought it was funny because he actually thought of that. And I was like, huh, But honestly, when you have a good haircut, like you talked about, that grows out 5-6 weeks, and someone's like, man, your hair looks great. You're like, oh, yeah, I got it cut like a month and a half ago. And they're like, well, damn, that's pretty sick.
Yeah. It's a great feeling.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts on consultation?
It's very important.
Rehearse.
And like you said with in barber school, asking like how long between haircuts. I used to think the same thing in mannequin class. I'm like, why do I need to ask this? This is stupid. And throughout my journey, it's one of my favorite questions to ask now because it is so important, and it gives you a visualization of like what that haircut might have been if it's a new client or whatever. But yeah, it's definitely important. It's definitely something to take serious, put your own little spin on it, but it can make or break you for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think kind of wrap it all in one is if you're ever, especially as a barber, if you're ever unsatisfied with how something ended or how that client was feeling, or you just didn't feel like everything kind of got hit and connected on it all, our argument is it's probably in your consultation.
Yeah.
Already happened in the first 5 minutes.
And you got to be able to accept that and be like, yeah, mate, it was on me then. Mm-hmm. Just grow from it.
Yeah, remember, you're the one leading the dance. This is your house. This is your service. It's 100% up to you to make sure that you ask all the questions, you give options, you have a game plan with your client, and you make sure you're on the same page before you even drape them up, before you even start cutting them. Everything can be elevated, everything can be improved if you improve your consultation.
I agree.
Hell yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. Thank you.